So on Tuesday, Sony announced this, their latest high-resolution model, the A7R Mark IV. It's a device that the company says combines digital medium format style image quality with some truly superior performance speeds. I'm here in Dublin at its European launch to get my first hands on and really find out what this camera can do. Now this camera is built around a 61 megapixel backside illuminated full frame sensor, and that's the largest resolution that a full frame sensor has ever had on a DSLR or on a mirrorless device. Now of course not every user is going to need that kind of resolution, but if you're a commercial shooter whose clients demand the kind of file sizes needed to make obscenely large prints, well, you're going to be able to deliver them with this camera. Of course, one of the benefits is also that you're able to shoot in an APS-C crop when wanted, perhaps for extra reach when capturing wildlife, and still have a highly usable 26 megapixel file outputted. The device's ISO range stretches from 100 to 32,000, remaining the same as the A7R IV despite that resolution jump, and at lower ISOs, Sony claim that this sensor will deliver up to a huge 15 stops of dynamic range. The camera also provides a pixel shift multi-shooting mode that takes 16 images with minute sensor adjustments before combining them for a composite file with improved colour and detail accuracy, as well as an absolutely crazy 240.8 megapixel resolution. Now, high-resolution cameras can be pretty unforgiving when it comes to camera shake in your images. You know, you've got so many pixels to play with, which are really going to show every tiny little detail in a scene and every tiny little movement that you might make. You know, it's going to create a little bit of blur potentially. Thankfully though, this camera has Sony's 5-axis image stabilization system built inside, and that's going to compensate for up to 5.5 stops of camera shake. So if you're out on location, perhaps you're in less than perfect light conditions, you're still going to have a really good chance of getting sharp handheld shots with this camera. Now, just like the A7R IV, this camera can shoot at a top continuous shooting speed at 10 frames per second. And that on paper sounds like there's not really been an improvement made. But when you consider that it's not dropped any speed, but it has gained that increased resolution, and also that it can now shoot for up to 68 raw frames before its buffer fills, actually, that's a pretty respectable figure for this camera. Now, if there's one area which Sony is probably hoping will really trump its digital medium format rivals in this camera, it's its autofocus system. This autofocus system includes 567 phase detection points and covers 74% of the frame, operating down to a respectable -3 EV. It also has all of Sony's highly touted autofocus tracking options like the Eye Autofocus and Animal Eye Autofocus. And you know, using this camera today, it's really obvious that this camera is both accurate and fast when finding focus on subjects, and that's not always true of digital medium format cameras. Now, if there's one area that critics have perhaps picked up on initially with this camera, it's that its video mode isn't quite as impressive as might be expected for a new Sony model. It can shoot 4K at 30 frames per second in 8-bit 420, but you know, there hasn't really been any improvements to its format as such. There has, however, been the addition of eye focusing when in its video mode, and you can also now shoot at a lower base level ISO. The base ISO of this camera's video mode is now 500 compared to the A7R III's 800, which will make shooting in bright conditions a bit easier. There's also no longer a maximum record time on this device. Full HD video recording is available up to 120 frames per second for super slow motion, and S-Log2 and S-Log3 are available to maximise colour grading flexibility. Now, when it comes to the build and handling of this camera, one of the things that Sony is quick to point out is that it has upgraded dust and weather sealing. So if you're the kind of photographer who spends a lot of time in the field, you're going to be able to use this device and not have to worry too much about its durability. Additional enhancements to the body design of this camera include an improved grip for greater comfort, an increase in the diameter and feedback of the AF on button, a new multi-selector joystick design for improved control, an exposure compensation dial lock button, and a redesigned shape and new position for its rear dial. This new camera now also includes 2 UHS-2 compatible media slots, allowing for higher overall capacity and faster read-write speeds. The camera has a fantastic new 0.5-inch 5.76 million dot OLED EVF, which makes composition and control of the camera with it to the eye a total joy. That 1.6 times boost in resolution to the EVF found in the A7R IV is really noticeable, and with a maximum refresh rate of 120 frames per second, it's nice and responsive too. That EVF has been matched with a 7.5cm tilt and touch display that has a 1,440,000 dot resolution. Despite its increased pixel count, battery life has also been improved, with 670 still images possible per charge when using its LCD monitor, or 530 images with its EVF. Upgraded connectivity options are also plentiful on this camera, with the biggest upgrade being that it now supports 5 GHz Wi-Fi as well as 2.4 GHz for faster, more stable data transfer. Wireless tethered shooting is also now supported on this camera, a first for a Sony. So let's face it, this camera is a bit of a beast. If you're a commercial shooter, perhaps you're a professional portrait photographer or professional landscape photographer, the massive resolution of those files and the dynamic range that they have is really going to appeal to you. Sony say that this camera has had over 50 improvements made on its predecessor, and things like that fantastic EVF, the eye focus during video, are really going to appeal to a lot of people. Arguably it's not quite as versatile a device as some of their other cameras. It's probably not going to have the same appeal to more hybrid shooters. It's very much a stills camera, but if you're one of those professionals looking for something that can rival a digital medium format camera but at a much cheaper price, then this camera is really going to appeal to you. For more information about the A7R Mark IV, visit lcegroup.co.uk.